Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back to the show. Excited to have you with me here on this Friday review where we're going through the very best of the week. One of my favorite shows to be able to bring to you because it's a recap from everything that's been going on in the practice over the past week or so, new research that I've been uncovering, new products I've been using, and for at least the next month or two, we're going to be going through what your lab results mean. So that whether you're doing a lab test at home with a functional medicine practitioner, integrative health practitioner, or you're doing your annual blood work with your PCP, that you begin to understand more of what those numbers mean so that you can take back control of your own health. That it's not your doctor's responsibility or you feel like you haven't been taught what you need to know about your own health. That you start to learn these things, not all at once, not the fire hose method, but a gradual drip each and every day, hopefully with the Cabral Concept and other podcasts that you're listening to or articles that you're reading. So what I want to do, and today actually was a full day in the practice. I see people once a week, sometimes a couple times a week, really just full days. And, they're great days. They really are. It's a lot of prep work because I'm reading all the labs ahead of time and I'm developing the protocols and just making sure that nothing has gone unnoticed and that I always tell people, and I talk about it, I'll talk about this on an upcoming podcast interview that I did, but I just want to make sure that whether someone orders a lab at Equilibrium Nutrition or they work with one of my health coaches or they work with myself, that we just want to be the last stop. That's it. Not an ego-based thing, anything like that, but I just know what it's like to suffer and to deal with things for just such a long period of time. And you just say, I just want my answers. Well, when you run labs, and again, it can be with any practitioner you want, but if that person knows how to read those labs and you ran the correct labs, you're going to figure out what's going on. So for example, today I met with this guy and he's been, struggling with, his energy now is at least 50% better. He's feeling a lot better. He dealt with gut issues. He dealt with skin rashes, and he knows who he is if he's listening to this podcast right now. He's in our integrative health practitioner program. Well, we did his organic acids test approximately 16, 18 weeks after he did his original one. So that's the mark, right? About 4 months later, we're going to start to retest. And this is one of the, it was not a good initial organic acids test. There was yeast overgrowth. There was mold markers overgrown. There was bacterial overgrowth. And there was C. diff, Clostridium difficile bacterial overgrowth. Well, we ran a perfect organic acids test afterwards. All the yeast and fungal-based markers are now down. All the bacterial markers are now down. The C. diff, it's no longer there. Just remember that. The only reason I share this with you is this was all done with natural health. All done. I'm not taking any credit for all of it. I've developed the protocols after years of study overseas and in the U.S. with many people that I've learned from. And it's an integrative approach. I use the best of everything, and that's it. That's what I'm saying is it's the best of everything out there. No ego, and it works. You don't need to do, and I'm going to share a study with you in just a few minutes on autism and the gut. You don't always need to take things to the highest level, which a lot of times conventional medicine does. So anyway, it's, if you're a health practitioner, you're looking to become a health practitioner, it is a lot of work. And you know that as a personal trainer or yoga instructor or any service-based job. But if you love what you do, it's absolutely worth it. And again, that's why I can finish 5 o'clock at night and still have the energy to record this podcast. And it's because I want to share these things with you. And one is I want to share the hope that if you're suffering from a wellness or a weight loss or an aging-based issue, it can be overcome. I really believe that. There's very few people, fractions of a percent of the population, and believe me, everyone always thinks that they're that fraction of the percent. But really, unless it's a congenital-based issue, I just believe it can be overcome. Now, it doesn't always mean that it will be overcome within a week, but it does mean that there's hope for you as well. So, but again, enough about that. Let's get into more of the Friday review, things that I want to bring you. And one of the things this week was I did a seminar, a webinar, and it was about 45 minutes long on one of our most popular podcasts that we've done before. And that is at stephencabral.com/BRMI. So I'm going to go to it right now. So I'll pull up my laptop here for a second, and I go to BRMI. So stephencabral.com/BRMI. And BRMI stands for BioRegulatory Medicine Institute. And this is an amazing organization that's dedicated to keeping the bioregulatory form of medicine alive. Now, bioregulatory medicine is not something that most practitioners will have ever been introduced to. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to it while I was studying for my doctorate degree in naturopathy. And it was an outside certification. I decided to do the certification. And the certification was in what's called homotoxicology. Homotoxicology, I've done a few podcasts on, so I'll link it all up at today's show notes. So don't worry about remembering everything today. Today's show notes, simply head on over to stephencabral.com/1169. And over at that show, you'll find the link for this. This is a completely free webinar that I did and recorded for the BioRegulatory Medicine Institute. I'm on the advisory board over there. They're a great organization. They do a couple events a year, one in the US and one overseas in Germany. And they have a short book on bioregulatory medicine that's excellent. I know they have practitioners. So great website, a lot of good content. It's something that I believe in. It's one of the 7 practices that I use inside of the Integrative Health Practitioner course and certification. And I recommend checking it out. So check that out, completely free, no opt-in or anything. Just head on over to BRMI. You'll get the slides there, the presentation. And it's just, part of what I try to do is just pay it forward. That's it. Teach the information that helped me get well and that's helped many thousands of people that we've worked with. And it's a video. It's very similar that I do for the Integrative Health Practitioner course or certification. So if you're a part of that, or even if you've never been a part of it, I think you'll hopefully enjoy it. So check it out. I love your feedback. Feel free to let me know. And then in about another week, anybody that sends in questions at brmi.online/contact. And by the way, that's in the webinar. I'll be doing a separate house call podcast on that to answer those questions. Okay, so that'll be in the show notes today at stephencabral.com/1169. And also want to let you know, I'll be linking up the podcast that I did with Sam Altieri. And I apologize, Sam, if I did not pronounce your name correctly, but don't be offended. I'm the worst at pronouncing names. But her podcast is fantastic. It's called Balance with Sam Podcast. I'm going to link it up here today. I did that interview with her. Pretty amazing that we've never met. There's obviously a lot of people that live in Boston, but she's from the Boston area, doesn't live too far away from me, but she has a great coaching practice and she has her podcast called Balance with Sam. So I'm going to link that up today. That was a really fun podcast that we did together. She just interviewed me on how mindset and how functional medicine labs and how it all goes together, where you can't have one without the other. You need the success mindset and the emotional balance along with the healing-based protocols in order to help someone fully get well, and not just to get well, but stay well. It's so important. Again, I saw another person in my practice today, and they've really done it all, and they're a great health coach. I see a lot of health coaches in my practice. Probably about a third to maybe 40% of my practice is working with other doctors and health coaches and just personal trainers, nutritionists, et cetera, on their own health. And, it's great for me to do because, we can talk about all these different things. Well, this person's been on their path for quite a bit of time, and they still have joint-based pain, and they've done all the eliminations and those types of things. And so I was chatting with them, and they said, I think it might be emotional-based. And I said, well, why do you feel it is emotional-based? Because I take everything into consideration, and I don't discount that. And she said, well, it always flares up when I'm under greater stress. And I said, interesting. It may or may not have its root cause in stress, but stress and inflammation, like I talk about in that webinar that I gave, certainly is accounting for it. So it's really great to look at all these things. That was the podcast that I did, and I'll link that. That will be embedded right over at episode 1169. And then I'll link over to Sam's podcast, the Balance with Sam podcast, if you want to check out more of her episodes as well. Thank you to everyone who has written in about how much improved the shipping to Australia, and that it would include our friends over in New Zealand as well. But really the improved shipping over there, and all of our Australian customers from Equilibrium Nutrition. We appreciate you, and we're happy to have you, and we're happy that we're able to get products to you really delivered to your doorstep in about 5 days. Some will get there in maybe 7-8 days, but really we get it to you in about 3 to 4 days now, which I find just remarkable that mail delivery can even happen that fast. But it gets out of our warehouse by 6 p.m. Eastern at night. We do same day shipping out, and it will get to you in 3 to 4 days max. And then they hold it in customs for only a day now rather than 3 or 4 days because of our work with the Australian government. And now you get it just delivered depending on how far you are from where it gets shipped in. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience. We're always trying to improve. And we're currently trying to do the same now for Spain and Germany. They're giving us a hard time on nutritional supplements. But remember, you're always going to have a lot of scars when you are the first to do something. And since we are really one of the first to get functional medicine-based products and labs shipped internationally all around the world, it's something we're happy to do, but it's a little bit frustrating at times. We want to get the products to you, but sometimes the government has their own idea. But remember, we're never giving up. We're going to keep pushing forward, and we'll make sure that we get there. All right. That is that. One more shout out before we get to some of my favorite product reviews and research for the week and the lab results. And that is, we are approaching 5,000 community members at CabralSupportGroup.com. CabralSupportGroup.com is simply a fancy URL that forwards you right over to our Facebook group. And it is for anyone looking to get essentially help with their health coaching questions, their weight loss questions. It started off as just a support group for the Dr. Ball Detox, and it has grown to really a worldwide global community group. We don't do any advertising, and we just say, hey, we're here to help. You have a question, feel free to ask it, but we would also love if you stuck around and you also supported others in the group. Give them your advice, give them your feedback, and also, support them too. So I'd love to see it grow. It's about 2.5 years old, I believe. And we are right at this moment. We're at 4,947 members. Stay tuned. When we hit 5,000 members, we're going to do something fun for everyone out there as well. So thanks so much for everyone that's a part of it. And if you want to join, head on over to CabralSupportGroup.com. We don't sell anything there. We're just there to try to give back and, again, answer your questions. And hopefully you provide some support for others as well. That's what it's all about. Again, when certainly the media isn't with us, they don't teach this in schools, so we really have to be there, for each other to provide what's worked in our health from a healthy perspective. Okay. Product review of the week. It's a random one, but it is a great one. So for those people out there that have trouble with snoring and they've looked at inflammation, they've looked at food sensitivities, sometimes it's a biomechanical or it's a deviation of the septums and how your nasal passages actually open up. So I want to refer you to a product that I've used in the past. I mean, again, there's a lot of products that I use, but this one is called a nasal dilator. And what a nasal dilator does is it actually expands your nasal passages. So what they are vents. They're silicone vents that help to expand the passage, the air passageway, to allow more oxygen to flow in. Now, let me give you the cons. Okay, I'll give you the cons. So this is the thing. I don't love when we put foreign bodies into the mouth, such as I've talked about this before, but something to align the teeth. I don't want to use the brand name. Or we use a retainer to keep the teeth in place. What happens is this. If we put those things against the mucous membranes, it can start to collect bacteria, and it does not always allow for proper flow of oxygen in and out, in and out. And it lets actually bacteria start to ferment there. It starts to just get right into the mucus-based membranes because it's kind of stuck. So that part I don't love. However, what we can do is we cannot wear them all the time. So for a lot of people with these nasal dilators, they're using them during exercise, probably a great idea if you have trouble breathing through your nose. But also they're using them at night to help with snoring, to help with sleep apnea, etc. So those people are getting great results from. And if you want to try them, I'm going to give you a reputable brand. That's what I can do for you. So this brand here's one of the reasons why I like them. And these brands change all the time, but this brand that I'm going to link up in today's show notes does a good job. They get good reviews. It's made of silicone, and it allows you 4 different sizes to find out the right size for you, because you want one larger than your nasal passages, like larger that can just slide in and fall out, because you want it to expand. So it's kind of like the Breathe Right strips that go over the nose, but it does more because it actually opens the nose from the inside out rather than from the outside in. And you'll obviously get a picture if you click on the link. And what they do is, the company that I'm recommending, it's not solid. So these aren't solid nasal cones or dilators, but actually more breathable. So I like that it doesn't block the entire mucous membrane, because I'm just not an advocate of that. And I certainly wouldn't recommend wearing these all day long. If you find yourself with trouble breathing, what worked tremendously for me, I'm just going to let you know, in my late 20s, I cut out a lot of food sensitivities. So if you're worried that, hey, this could be inflammation related to foods, run a food sensitivity test. Honestly, it's going to give you that answer. I ended up being sensitive to dairy, even whey protein. I was sensitive to gluten. I was sensitive to almonds. I was sensitive to chicken. I was sensitive to kidney beans. A lot of random things that I wouldn't have known had I not tested. I removed those. I mean, it was remarkable at how much less mucus I produced and how much less swelling there was in my nasal passages. I could breathe better. Then I went on, because I was on a mission at that point, to figure out my gut, and I figured out I had candida overgrowth and I had bacterial overgrowth. Worked on that, got even better. Now I can breathe more like a normal person, even with a deviated septum on my right side. So I've thought about having the nasal surgery to actually widen that deviated septum, but at the same time, then I'd have to use antibiotics again, and you never know what can go wrong. So I've held off on that, and I'm really working a lot. I think I mentioned the book before to you. I'm going to do more work on this, is really working on my breathing, but I can tell you right now, there's no inflammation left in those breathing passages. So anyway, in the short term, you can check out these nasal dilators, and maybe in the long term, you'll work on some of the food sensitivities and overall inflammation in your body. All right, I'll link those up. Nasal dilators is what they're called. And I'm happy to share that at the show notes link at stephencabral.com/1169 and check that out. All right, next up is a study to go over for the week, and that is this very bold headline here. Autism symptoms reduced nearly 50%. It was about 45%. That was the exact stat. 2 years after fecal transplant therapy. Now, fecal transplant therapy, for those people that don't know what it is or have never heard about it before, well, it goes by different names. The technical name is called fecal microbiota transplantation. And if you've never heard about it before, typically what they do is they find someone with a good stool sample. I was about to say pure. There's no pure stool samples, but they find one without SIBO, C. diff, E. coli overgrowth, etc. Ideally, you want to look for someone in your own family if that's possible. And then what they do is they actually transplant the feces, which is stool, a bowel movement, poop, whatever you want to call it, into the person that's having the transplant. Now, you're doing this a lot of times for antibiotic-resistant C. diff or E. coli or, in this case, autism-based symptoms. I'm just going to go through the study, but I'm going to give you my take on this because conventional medicine likes to take things from like A to Z and they skip all the steps, between A to Z. But anyway, that's a topic that we've talked about before. But, the results are pretty remarkable. So I still have to bring you the research because I want to always be unbiased. So this is pretty remarkable. Here's why. It didn't just work for a few months after the therapy. It actually worked, and they did the follow-up 2 years later, and about 45% improvement. I still think it can be a lot better, but it said right here, 2 years after treatment stopped, participants still had an average of 58% reduction in GI symptoms compared to the baseline. And that's because a lot of children with autism have constipation and bloating and a lot of other gut-based symptoms. Then a professional third-party evaluator went out to the children with autism that had this fecal microbiota transplantation. And what they found was that there was a 45% decrease in autism spectrum disorder-based symptoms, which, by the way, is huge. And they did see that 83% of the participants that first had this done were on the severe autism spectrum. So again, this could be life-changing for a lot of people. Okay, so you now know what it is, and here's why. What they found, and I'm going to link up the it's Bio News Central is where I got this from, and I'm happy to link up that exact article for you as well, where I first saw it. Here's the thing, though. In natural health, we've known that the gut plays an enormous part in autism and in all sorts of childhood-based issues with both mind and body. We've known that for a very long time. One of the doctors that I studied under many years ago was Dr. Kurt Wohler, and I want to give a little shout out and praise to him because he does great work, and he does great work with autism as well. I studied under Dr. Natasha with the gap space protocol, so shout out to her as well. So again, I integrate everything. And I was learning more than a decade ago that Clostridium difficile, C. diff, and other types of bacterial overgrowth greatly affected children with autism. Was it one of the causal factors? Maybe not. We don't know. I actually believe autism is multifactorial. I don't think that you're going to find the answer by fixing one thing for autism. People blame it on certain types of things with interventions with conventional medicine. Others blame it on heavy metals. And so there's a lot of blame to go around, but I can tell you that there's most likely susceptibility. And some of that can be genetic based, but it's not enough. That's not enough because it has to be something else. It has to be environmental based. It has to be something that we're doing to our body because we've just seen levels skyrocket. I'm not talking, this is not normal progression of a disease. It's not. This is not normal. It was 1 in a couple thousand a few decades ago, 1 in a couple hundred, 1 in 85, 1 in 58. Now people are saying 1 in 38. I mean, that's not even humanly possible. There is something that we're doing that's causing this in children, and it's unfair. None of these children asked to have autism, and the parents did not ask to be parents of an autistic child. And it's one of those things in life that we say we don't always know how, but I'm telling you right now, this is a dis-ease of a modern toxic-based society. It really is. This is a full rain barrel on children from a very early age that are developing or have autism from a very young age. And I want to help these parents and the children get the help that they deserve. So if you are the parent of a child with autism, I can't recommend enough working with a practitioner that has worked with someone with autistic-based children, and they've gotten them results by looking at the gut microbiome. I do not recommend going out and getting a fecal-based transplant. There's so much more you can do before that. There really is. And we've seen phenomenal results in natural health care by fixing the gut. So I just want to send that out to you. Can't recommend enough. You run an organic acids test. You run a stool test. You run a food sensitivity test. I mean, of course, I recommend the Big Five plus the stool test. But also for autism, I do recommend working with a practitioner just because there's going to be a lot of back and forth. So hopefully I can help. And I just, again, even conventional medicine with going right to fecal-based transplants, they're showing it as well. We have to look to the gut. We have to look to the gut. Super important. It's not the only thing, but we need to show that because we know that Clostridia-based bacteria affect dopamine in children with autism, and we've just seen great results with it. So I can't stress it enough. We need to look there. Okay, last item I want to bring you today is on a lab test. I've talked about it before, but I've never given the in-depth that I want to do. So every Friday, I want to give you what do your lab results mean. And today we're going over homocysteine. Homocysteine is a great marker to look for in blood work. Unfortunately, your PCP may not run it unless you ask for it. So when you go in for your annual blood work, say, I would like to have my lipid panel, which is just your cholesterol. I would like to have my homocysteine, and I would like to have my CRP done. Those aren't the only ones, but they're going to add them onto your typical CBC, which is your complete blood count, and your other labs. Now, we'll go through all of them, but I did a podcast called What to Ask For on Your Annual Blood Work, something like that. And again, you can ask what podcast that was at cabralsupportgroup.com, or simply go to stephencabral.com/podcast. And if we, let me do it with you right now. So go to stephencabral.com/podcasts, scroll down a little bit on the page. There'll be a search box, and just type in annual blood work. I'm just going to type in annual blood, and we'll see what pops up. And it's going to show that I have 2 pages worth. So let's just check it out. And it's going to be on a specific podcast, like a Total Wellness Tuesday or a Weight Loss and Wellness Wednesday. And it's right there. What to ask for and why when running your annual blood work is episode 767. So you can just go to stephencabral.com/767. The reason I bring this up is because with 1,168 podcasts, I've probably done a show on it by now. And so I'm telling you, this is a great way, I believe, to get your answer, free content on a podcast. And that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so that was episode 767, what to ask for on annual blood work. Ask for homocysteine. It's because remember, cholesterol is not enough. You want to know your cholesterol. You want to know your LDL, your HDL, your total cholesterol, your cholesterol divided by your HDL for your ratio. You want to know your triglycerides. If you want to get really in depth, you'll look at particle size, etc. Okay, I'll go over that another day. But homocysteine, if that's elevated, it can mean inflammation. And inflammation as a risk factor for cardiovascular disease, cardiovascular death. So we want to look at that. It's very, very important to look at because it's an easy marker to help lower. And again, you don't want it. So the range is huge, 0 to 15. But you want it below a 10. You want your homocysteine below a 10. You don't want it at 11 or 12 or 13 or certainly not a 14, 15. And if you see it elevated above a 10, just from a functional medicine perspective, because your PCP won't tell you it's high unless it's above 15. Well, if it is high, it means that your body is having a difficult time really recycling homocysteine, which is an amino acid in the blood, back to methionine. And it's not doing this most likely because of a breakdown in methylation. And sure, you could run your genetics, but it's most likely a shortage of methylated folate, B6, and B12. Ideally, other methyl donors are in there as well, such as what's called trimethylglycine, TMG. All of these are available in a product that you can get, which is called Activated B Complex, or every day in your daily nutritional support. But honestly, it's a simple fix that there's no way your PCP would ever tell you that. And it's not their fault. I always want to say that. I'm not coming down on MDs. MDs don't study biochemistry from a nutritional standpoint in college. They don't. It's just not taught. So if you're not taught it, then you need to do all this research on your own, extra stuff, and you can't do it, right? If someone comes in with high cholesterol, high homocysteine, and high CRP, you're liable. You need to give them a statin if you're an MD, if you're a licensed medical doctor. Luckily, in my type of work, I don't have to do that. I can say, yeah, you can do that option, or we can look at the root cause of your high homocysteine, which may be too much red meat. It's possible. Again, not for everyone, but some people are going to be more susceptible. And arachidonic acid levels, or not enough methylated B vitamins, methylcobalamin, P5P for your B6, and your methylfolate. Easy to get, easy to bring it down. And again, something like activated B complex with the cofactors such as the trimethylglycine, the choline, those are all great. So keep in mind, it's a risk factor, inflammation in the arteries. You don't want it. And now you know, not just above a 15, but anything above a 10 is suspect. You can run your B vitamins on an organic acids test, easy test to do, simple urine-based test. Love that test for so many different reasons because it shows you those gut-based levels, meaning like, yeah, I already talked about that in terms of autism, but for everybody, looks at the fungal-based overgrowth, looks at Clostridia-based bacteria. Amazing, amazing lab. So there you have it. If there's any questions, I'm always happy to help. My team's happy to help over at cabralsupportgroup.com. Let us know what we can do to improve. We are here to help support you. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for your reviews of the Cabral concept on iTunes and everywhere that your podcasts are available. And don't forget to tune in on the weekends when we do our Cabral house calls, where I answer all of those questions each and every weekend. Take care, everyone. Have an amazing rest of the week. And don't forget to listen to the end of the podcast where I give whatever special podcast listener only offers going on at the end of the show. Take care, everyone. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.